Since tomorrow is Thanksgiving, I thought I would read a Thanksgiving story. And specifically, it's going to be a book called Chanticleer, a Thanksgiving story of the Peabody family. This was written by Abby Poyen Whittier, and probably with some help from Mathew Franklin Whittier, her husband. Would have been written around 1833, 1834, when Mathew was also working on a number of other short novels. It is published anonymously, as I'll show you on the screen. In 1856, this came out with the author's name of Cornelius Mathews. It's a long story. I have all of this delved into in a written blog that I did recently, which I will link below this video. The only thing I should mention is that Mathew's contribution was generally humor, and in these early years, 1833 or so, in the early 1830s, he was not averse to using ethnic humor. So at the very end, you will see a portrayal of the black servant that's kind of humorous, uses her as comic relief. I would guess that was Mathew's contribution. But if you keep reading in this story, you'll find that she is the undisputed master in the kitchen and has a certain wisdom, intuitive wisdom of her own, and that would have been Abby's contribution. But by and large, this first chapter that I'm going to read is all Abby's work. It's her voice. And you will see the same combination in A Christmas Carol, where in the opening of A Christmas Carol, the introduction, that's Mathew Franklin Whittier's voice, his humor, his puns, and so on. But then when you get to the speeches given by the various ghosts and spirits, that's Abby, and you'll see the exact same mix in this book. You might have noticed that there is a portrait over here. I think that this was Mathew Franklin Whittier's daughter, Alice, but he called her Allie, probably at about 3 years old. I'm guessing that this was taken right before he went over to Europe in mid-1851. He probably had a portrait made that he could take with him of her. And I think she may actually be looking at him in the photograph. Now, logistically, this came from Portland, Maine. And I figured out that given all the factors that I could throw into the mix, probably there's about a 1 in 200 chance that this is actually the historical Alice Whittier. But the more that I bought the original CDV, which was a copy probably of a daguerreotype, I bought it on eBay, and the more that I had it, the longer I had it, and the more I hung out with it, having it on display, the more I felt that this was really Allie, because I could just, the emotional memory just kept increasing the longer that I had it. So no proof, but I made a nice little copy of it, and I put it up on this bookshelf. Now, without further ado, let's get into the book. Again, probably all of this is Abby's voice, excepting the very end, possibly. There's some very interesting detective work that goes into identifying this, which again is some of that's in my blog entry. So there's a preface. I'll go ahead and read that. Ostensibly, this would have been written by Mathew. Shall the glorious festival of Thanksgiving, now yearly celebrated all over the American Union, said the author to himself one day, be ushered in with no other trumpet than the proclamation of state governors? May we not have a little holiday book of our own in harmony with that cherished anniversary, which, while it pleases your fellow countrymen, should it have that good fortune, may acquaint distant strangers with the observance of that happy custom of our country? With the hope that it may be so received, and as a kindly word spoken to all classes and sections of his fellow citizens, awakening a feeling of union and fraternal friendship at this genial season, the writer presents this little volume of home characters and incidents, November 1850. Now that would have been written some years after Charles Dickens published A Christmas Carol, so you can kind of see where he's coming from with that. You know, we wrote a story of Christmas, and now here is our story of Thanksgiving. Of course, it's published posthumously because Abby died in 1841. Now, when I make mistakes here, I'm going to, fix some of them, I guess, but I'm not going to fix every single mistake as I have in the past. I'm not going to put the printed copy up on the screen, and so if I make a non-deadly type of mistake, I'll just let it go. But be aware that, if I've misread something, this may not be 100% literal what's in the book. It's small type. I don't have really good lighting here. Chapter 1st, the landscape of the story. I see old Sylvester Peabody, the head of the Peabody family, seated in the porch of his country dwelling, like an ancient patriarch in the calm of the morning. His broad-brimmed hat lies on the bench at his side, and his venerable white locks flow down his shoulders, which time and 100 seasons of battle and sorrow, of harvest and drought, of toil and death, in all his hearty wrestlings with old Sylvester, has not been able to bend. The old man's form is erect and tall, and lifting up his head to its height, he looks afar down the country road which leads from his rural door towards the city. He has kept his gaze in that direction for better than an hour, and a mist has gradually crept upon his vision. Objects begin to lose their distinctness. They grow dim or soften away like ghosts or spirits. The whole landscape melts gently into a pictured dew before him. Is old Sylvester, who has kept it clear and bright so long, losing his sight at last? Or is our common world already changing under the old patriarch's pure regard into that better heavenly land? It seemed indeed, on this very calm morning in November, as if angels were busy about the old homestead which lies on the map in the heart of one of the early states of our dear American Union, transforming all the old familiar things into something better and purer, and touching them gently with the music and radiance caught from the very sky itself. As in the innocence of beauty, shrouded in sleep, dreams come to the eyelids, which are the realities of the day, with a strange loveliness, the fair country lay as it were in a delicious, dreamy slumber. The trees did not stand forth boldly with every branch and leaf, but rather seemed gentle pictures of trees. The sheep bells from the hills tinkled softly, and as if whispering a secret to the wind. The birds sailed slowly to and fro on the air. There was no harshness in the low of the herds, no anger in the heat of the sun, not a sight nor a sound, near by nor far off, which did not partake of the holy beauty of the morning, nor sing, nor be silent, nor stand still, nor move with any other than a gliding sweetness and repose, or an undertone which might have been the echo here on earth of a better sphere. There was a tender sadness and wonder in the face of old Sylvester when a voice came stealing in upon the silence. It did not in a single tone disturb the heavenly harmony of the hour, for it was the voice of the orphan dependent of the house, Miriam Haven, whose dark bright eye and graceful form glimmered as though she were the spirit of all the softened beauty of the scene, from amid the broom-corn, where she was busy in one of the duties of the season. Well might she sing the song of lament, for her people had gone down far away in the sea, and her lover, where was he? Far away are they, and I in all the world alone. Brightly, too brightly shines the day, dark is the land where they are gone. I have a friend that's far away, unknown the clime that bears his tread. Perchance he walks in light today. He may be dead, he may be dead. Like every other condition of the time, the voice of Miriam, too, had a change in it. What wonder is this, said old Sylvester. I neither hear nor see as I used. Are all my senses going? He turned as he spoke to a woman of small stature, in whose features dignity and tenderness mingled, as she now regarded him with reverence for the ancient head of the house. She came forward as he addressed her, and laying her hand gently on his arm, said, You forget, Father, this is the Indian summer, which is the first summer softened and soberer, and often comes at Thanksgiving time. It always changes the country, as you see it now. Child, child, you are right. I should have known it, for always at this season, often as it has come to me, do I think of the absent and the dead, of times and hours and friends long, long passed away, of those whom I have known, he continued eagerly, who have fallen in battle, in the toil of the field, on the highway, on the waters, in silent chambers, by sickness, by swords. I thank God they have all of my kith and kin and people died with their names untouched with crime. All, he added with energy, planting his feet firmly on the ground and rising as he spoke sternly, all save one alone, and he turned toward the female at his side, and when he looked in her face and saw the mournful expression which came upon it, he dropped back into his chair and stayed his speech. At this moment, a little fellow who, with his flaxen locks and blue eyes, was a very cherub in plumpness and the clearness of his brow, came toddling out of the door of the house, struggling with a basin of yellow corn, which, sifting about in his arms, he just managed to keep possession of till he reached old Sylvester's knee. This was little Sam Peabody, the youngest of the Peabodys, and as he looked up into his grandfather's face, you could not fail to see, though they grew so wide apart, the same story of passion and character in each. The little fellow began throwing the bright grain from the basin to a great strutting turkey, which went marching and gobbling up and down the dooryard, swelling his feathers, spreading his tail, and shaking his red necktie with a boundless pretense and restlessness. Like many a hero, he was proud of his uniform, although the fatal hour which was to lay him low was not far off. It was the Thanksgiving turkey himself, in process of fattening under charge of Master Sam Peabody. Busy in the act, he was regarded with smiling fondness by his mother, the widow Margaret Peabody, and his old grandfather, when he suddenly turned and said, "Grandpa, where's Brother Eldridge?" The old man changed his countenance and struggled a moment with himself. "He had better know all," he said, after a pause of thought, in which he looked, or seemed to look afar off from the scene about him. "Margaret, painful though it be to you and to me, let the truth be spoken. God knows I love your son, Elbridge, and would have laid down my life that this thing had not chanced, but the child asks of his brother so often, and is so often evaded, that he will be presently snared in a net of falsehoods and deceptions if we speak not more plainly to him." An inexpressible anguish overspread the countenance of the widowed woman, and she turned aside to breathe a brief prayer of trust and hope of strength in the hour of trial. The Thanksgiving turkey, full of his banquet of corn, strutted away to a slope in the sun by the roadside, and little Sam Peabody renewed his question. "Can't I see Brother Eldridge, Grandpa?" "Never again, I fear, my child." "Why not, Grandfather?" "Answer gently, Father," the widow interposed. "Make not the case too harsh against my boy." "Margaret," said the old man, lifting his countenance upon her with dignity of look, "I shall speak the truth. I would have the name of my race pure of all stains and detractions, as it has been for 100 years, but I would not bear hardly against your son, Margaret. This child, innocent and unswayed as he is, shall hear it, and shall be the judge." Rising, old Sylvester, with Margaret's help, lifted the boy to the deep window seat, and, standing on either hand, the widow and the old man each at his side, Sylvester taking one hand of the child in his, began. "My child, you are the youngest of this name and household. To you God may have entrusted the continuance of our race and name. Therefore, thus early would I have you learn the lesson your brother's errors may teach." "That should come last," the widow interposed gently. "The story itself should teach it if the story be true." "Perhaps it should, Margaret," old Sylvester rejoined. "I will let the story speak for itself. It is, my child, a year ago this day that an excellent man, Mr. Barbary, the preacher of this neighborhood, disappeared from among living men. He was blameless in his life. He had no enemy on the face of the earth. He was a simple, frugal, worthy man. The last time alive, he was seen in company with your brother Elbridge by the locust wood, near the pond where you go to gather huckleberries in the summer and hazels in the autumn. He was seen with him and seen no more. But no man saw Elbridge, father, lift hand against him or utter an angry word. On the contrary, they were seen entering the wood in close companionship and smiling on each other. Even so, Margaret, said Sylvester, looking at the child steadily and waving his hand in silence toward the window. But what answer gave the young man when questioned of the whereabout of his friend? Not a word, Margaret, not a word, my child. Is Mr. Barbary dead, grandfather? The child inquired, leaning forward. How else? He is not to be found in pulpit or field. No man seeth his steps any more in their ancient haunts. No man hearkens to his voice. But the body, father, was never found. He may be still living in some other quarter. It was near the rock called High Point, you will remember, and one plunge might have sent him to the bottom. The undercurrents of the lake are strong, and they may have easily swept him away. There is but one belief through all this neighborhood. Ethan Barbary fell by the hand, Almighty God, that I should have to say it to you, my own grandson, of Elbridge Peabody. The child sat for a moment in dumb astonishment, glancing with distended eyes and sweat upon his brow, fearfully from the stern face of the old man to the downcast features of the widow. When recovering speech, he asked, Why should my brother kill Mr. Barbary if he was his friend? Was not Elbridge always kind, mother? I'm sure he was to me, and used to let me ride old Sorrel before him to the mill. Ever kind? He was. There was not a day he did not make glad his poor mother's heart with some generous act of devotion to her. No sun set on the day which did not cheer her lonely hearth with a new light of gladness and peace from his young eyes. Margaret, you forget. He was soft of heart, but proud of spirit and haughty beyond his age. You may not remember. Even I could not always look down his anger or silence his loudness of speech. Why should he kill Mr. Barbary? I will tell you, child. The preacher, too, had discerned well your brother's besetting sin, and, being fearless in duty, from the Sabbath pulpit he spake of it plainly, and with such point that it could not fail to come home directly to the bosom of the young man. This was on the very Lord's day before Mr. Barbary disappeared from amongst us. It rankled in your brother's bosom like poison. His passions were wild and ungoverned, and this was cause enough. If he had been innocent, why did Elbridge Peabody flee this neighborhood like a thief in the night? Why did my brother Elbridge leave us, mother? Said the child, bending eagerly towards the widow, who wrung her hands and was silent. He may come back, said the child, shaking his flaxen locks, and not abashed in the least by her silence. He may come back yet and explain all to us. Never. At that moment a red rooster, who stood with his burnished wings on the garden wall, near enough to have heard all that had passed, lifted up his throat and poured forth a clear cry, which rang through the placid air far and wide. He will, I know he will, said little Sam Peabody, leaping down from his judgment seat in the window. Chanticleer knows he will, or he would not speak in that way. He hasn't crowed once before, you know, grandmother, since Elbridge went away. We'll hear from brother soon. I know we shall. I know we shall. The little fellow, in his glee, clapped his hands and crowed too. The grandfather, looking on his gambols, smiled, but was presently sad again. Would to heaven they may, he said. If they come who should, today we may learn of him. For today my children should come up from all the quarters of the land where they are scattered, the east, the west, the north, the south, to join with me in the festival of Thanksgiving, which now draws near. My head is whitened with many winters, and I shall see them for the first time. Sylvester continued, If they come in this calm season, which, so soft and sweet, seems the gentle dawn of the coming world, we shall have, I feel, our last regathering on earth. But they come not. My eyes are weary with watching afar off, and I cannot yet discern that my children bear me in remembrance in this grateful season of the year. Why do they not come?" The aged patriarch of the family bowed his head and was silent. From the broom corn, the gentle voice stole again. "Why sings the robin in the wood? For him her music is not shed. Why blind brooks sparkle through the field? He may be dead, he may be dead." The murmur of Miriam's musical lamenting had scarcely died away on the dreamy air when there came hurrying forward from the garden, where she had been tending the great Thanksgiving pumpkin, which was her special charge, the black servant of the household, Mopsy by name, who, with her broad-fringed cap flying all abroad and her great eyes rolling, spoke out as she approached. "Do you hear dat, massa?" "I hear nothing, Mopsy." "Dere, don't you hear it now? They are coming." With faces of curiosity and ears erect, they listened. There was a peculiar sound in the air, and on closer attention they discerned, in the stillness of the morning, the jingling traces of the stagecoach on the crossroad through the fields. "They are not coming," said old Sylvester, when the sound had died away in the distance. "The stage has taken the other road." "Dat may be, grandfather," Mopsy spoke up, "but for all dey may come. Ugly Davis, when he drive, don't always turn out of his way to come up here. Dey may be on de corner." As Mopsy spoke, two figures appeared on foot on the brow of the road, which sloped down toward the homestead, through a feathery range of graceful locusts. They were too far off to be distinctly made out, but it was to be inferred that they were travelers from a distance, for one of them held against the light some sort of traveling bag or portmanteau. One of them was in female dress, but this was all they could as yet distinguish. Various conjectures were ventured as to their special character. They were unquestionably making for the homestead, and it was to be reasonably supposed they were Peabodys, for strangers were rare upon that road, which was a byway off the main thoroughfare. The family gathered on the extreme outlook of the balcony and watched with eager curiosity their approach, which was slow and somewhat irregular. The man did not aid the woman in her progress, but straggled on apart, nor did he seem to address her as they came on. That, with some possible additions for humor by Mathew, was Abby's voice. And if you read A Christmas Carol, especially those portions that have to do with the ghosts' speeches, you will see the same voice there. There's so much more that I would share of Abby's writing. I'm always a little shy about sharing Abby's work on this channel because it's a mixed audience and I don't know who will be watching, but I know there are some who will appreciate it and hopefully have watched to the end of this little story hour, and I hope you have appreciated it, and happy Thanksgiving.